everybody for being here today. And right now, I don't think we've got any young folks to go to children's church. So we've been had a few weeks there. We hadn't had any of that age except for Brother Rodney's little grandson. But glad you're all here today. And we got a couple that probably need to go to nursery. If they get a little bit out of hand, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I heard one preacher said, if I can't preach over a baby, I need to go home. So we'll go with that plan today, all right? You pray for Brother Kevin as he sings this morning.
Just like you in so many ways. I've had my share of tears, had my share of rainy days. Yeah, there were ups and downs, and the seasons turned. But through it all, the greatest lesson that I have learned is to just let God be God on those little days, and He'll be God there on the bigger days. Why do we wait until things go wrong? We could have Him by our side all along. Let God be God in the best of times. He'll be your God when you're going through the worst of times. If you need God to move in mighty ways, when you need God to be there on the bigger days, pray on the little days. It's more than a book sitting on a table. God can change your life, He's willing and He's able. Oh, but we keep Him small and then we stay the same. But we could change the world by calling on His name. So let God be God on the little days. He'll be God when you're going through the bigger days. Why do we wait until things go wrong? We could have Him by our side all along. Let God be God in the best of times. He'll be God when you're going through the worst of times. When you need God to move in mighty ways. When you need God to be there on the
I am a typical male in that I like to control what's going on. And I find myself sometimes not being able to do that. And it's hard for me to relinquish and let God just be God. And I know probably we all struggle with that at times. All right? Let's take our Bibles this morning, if you will, and turn to Romans chapter 12. We'll be back there today in Romans chapter 12, verse number 1 and 2. I really, really need you to pray for me today. I'm a little troubled in my spirit. I know why. Because of the content that I'm about to share with you. And I'm not saying all that for you to feel any way. I'm just being truthful with you. So I need you to pray hard this morning that God will bind back that spirit of trouble that I have. I want to be honest with you. What we're about to talk about today is going to be very convicting. I know that because it's been convicting to me. And it's going to be very important that you have an open mind and a softened heart to receive what God's Word has for us today. It is not a pleasant thing to talk about, but it's a very, 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 can I say it again, very needful thing. All right, so be praying this morning, both for yourself and for me. If you're in Romans chapter 12, say amen. If you found verse 1, let me know that by standing to your feet. If you are able, if you stay seated, it's not an issue. But if you can, stand this morning with the reading of God's Word. The Bible says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Last week we dealt with verse 1. Today we're going to deal with the first few words in verse number 2. It says that be not conformed to this world. Be not conformed to this world. Brother Harris, if you will, will you pray for us this morning and ask God to touch in everything that's said today?
Lord, we thank you this morning for your love and your mercy. Lord, we thank you for the privilege to gather here again this morning. Lord, I pray especially for our folks, Lord, it's not with us today. The ones that are traveling, Lord, you watch over them, give them a safe journey back home. Lord, you know the mess that our nation's in this morning, and I pray, Lord, you work that out in the hearts of your people. Lord, you know what we need, and I pray, God, you'll supply that need here today. Lord, I pray for Brother Chris as he stands to preach. I pray, Lord, you touch him. Lord, that you give him a special touch today. Lord, help us to all be receptive to what you have for us here this morning. Lord, we want to thank you for all you do now in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you so much. You may be seated. The Bible says in verse 1, I beseech you, therefore, brethren. And we talked last week, that word beseech means, hey, I need your attention. I want to encourage you. Please, please do what I'm about to say. And it goes on to say, you therefore. We know when we see the word therefore, we're to look back and see what it's there for. And chapter 1 all the way through chapter 11 of Romans, God is letting us know through the Apostle Paul about what grace is, what justification is, and God's mercy in our life. And so you could almost say that Paul is saying, because God has done all of this for us, I have something that we should do for God. And in that verse, it says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God. How many of you God's been merciful to today? It better be everybody in the building. The fact you're sitting here today with air to breathe, God's been merciful. He goes on to say that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. We talked last week about yielding our instruments to God. In other words, yielding our mind, yielding our eyes, yielding our ears, yielding our mouth, using our hands, yielding our feet, yielding our heart. Everything that you have today is because of Him. Can I get a witness, church? And we need to yield it back to Him. And this is a sidebar for just a moment. God just laid this on my heart. Everything in my life that God has given me and that I have yielded back, He has blessed me multiple times over for yielding it back. So don't be a stingy person and say, well, it's mine. Oh, it's not. And when you give it back to Him and yield it to Him, He will bless you beyond what you can even imagine. I promise you, I've seen it happen over and over and over again. So I challenge you, yield your life to Him. Now, verse number 2. Be not conformed to this what? Be not conformed to this world. Several years ago, we took some kids to Chicago. I believe it was Justin and Damien at the time. We took to Chicago to visit Kathy's parents. We went to one of the museums up there. And in that museum, they had a U-boat, a German U-boat that had been captured during World War II, I believe it was. And you could tour the U-boat, which is a submarine, and outside of it, there was a little vending machine, and you could put, I think it was 4 quarters in the vending machine, and you could watch through a glass as that vending machine blew hot plastic down into a mold, and then it injected air into that hot plastic, and it blew that plastic out, it filled up the mold, and then when it came out, you got a little replica of the U-boat. That plastic was conformed to an outside mold to make it what it turned out to be. And Paul is writing here in chapter 2, don't let your life be blown out into the world's pattern, the world's mold, and then you come out looking like the world. I've mentioned it several times in here in the fact that used to, when I was a young person, you could see people out at the stores, the supermarkets, the convenience stores, wherever, and you could go, oh, there goes a Christian. Oh, that person's not a Christian. That person is a Christian. That person is not a Christian. And you could almost just simply by looking tell. How many of you remember them days? Oh, the good old days, they call them. Nowadays, man, I need a bigger pulpit to hide behind. Nowadays, they walk out of the church. And if you were to look by the eye, you wouldn't be able to tell. Thank you. Be not conformed to this world. What is God talking about when He talks about the world? He's not talking about humanity. He's not talking about people. People are a product of what they're in. He's not talking about the physical ground, the earth, the trees, the whatever. What's He talking about? A world system. And let me tell you something, people. We are seeing it being played out every day, every minute, every year. There's things going on in the world today that 10, 20 years ago, if you told me this is what you're going to see, I'd have said, you got to be crazy. It'll never come to that. Thank you. The world system. Be not conformed. Let's look, number 1, at the world defined. In John chapter 7, verse 7, Jesus is speaking to unbelievers. The world cannot hate you. The world doesn't hate his own. The world cannot hate you, but me it hateth, because I testify of it that the works thereof are evil. What's God saying through the writer in John? He is saying the world's not going to hate its own, but it's going to hate me. Why? Because I testify of it. I'm telling you its true colors, and that the works thereof are evil. I was told yesterday at the men's breakfast that Hamilton County school system. How many of you know where Hamilton County is? Is it nearby? Absolutely. Matter of fact, I think you cross the state line, you're in Hamilton County at some point. Hamilton County schools have decided to take the Bible out of all the libraries in the school systems. Get this, because it is vulgar. That it talks about homosexuality, that it talks about adultery, that it talks about fornication. Yes, it does. It says don't do it. Novel idea. I'm getting over that troubled spirit, y'all. That blows my mind. That's the world we're living in. Then again, in John chapter 15, Jesus speaks to the believers. These are His people. If you were of the world would love His own. He's almost backing up what I just said about verse 7. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. If you want to run as a Christian a popularity contest, I could go ahead and tell you you're not going to win out there. How many of you know who Tim Tebow is? Tim Tebow was a football player, very good, probably one of the better college players, made it into the pros, and in my opinion didn't get a fair shot at it, but that's not neither here or there. But Tim Tebow would bow before the game and pray, not showing off. Most of the time it was over by the bench. And there was a little thing called he's Tebowing. That meant he was down on one knee praying. And he was vilified and run down for that. Reporters would make fun of him for saying that he was saving himself sexually for marriage. And they made fun of him for it. Matter of fact, it was a joke all over ESPN. Because a young man had some Christian stance and was willing to stand for God. He was an excellent football player. He's a good-looking boy. Everything about him was positive. But they vilified him. And then they, poor old Colin Kaepernick, and they lifted him up as something special. Do you understand what we're dealing with? I'm not trying to get controversial. I'm telling you what God's Word tells us. In John chapter 17, verse 14, I have given them thy word, and the world hath hated them, because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Verse 15, I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but that thou shouldest keep them from the evil. Dear friend, today we have to withstand what the world's dishing out and not be conformed to it. Now, let me be honest with you for a moment. I'll be honest with you all day, but let me specify this. That's easy preaching, but hard living. It's easy to preach about it. It's easy to read about it. But when you're out in it, it's hard to live it. Can I get a witness? I'm not going to stand here and tell you today it's easy. But it is worth it. Let's look at the world as it is described. It is described as wickedness. 1 John 5:19. And we know that we are of God, and the whole world lieth in wickedness. It's wicked. I don't know how many of you like or watch boxing. Boxing's kind of a dying sport. But when you go in the boxing ring, there are certain rules. You wear certain gloves. You have certain time limit. You have certain areas you can hit. You can't hit below the waist. You can't kick. Mike Tyson, you can't bite. Amen? If you didn't know that joke, you're too young, okay? You can't bite. You can't headbutt. It's all about rules and fighting. Can I tell you today, the world doesn't fight by rules. You know why? It's wicked. Is there even a worse word than wicked? That describes it. So it's described as wicked. It's described as a course or an order, a system, a way of life, a conduct. Look at Ephesians 2:2. Wherein in time past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in children of disobedience. The world is described as a course, a plan, a system, a way of life. C, it's described as a spirit. Now we, having received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit which is of God, that we might know the things that are freely given to us. So it's described as a spirit. Look at 1 John 4:3. And every spirit that confesseth not Jesus Christ is come in flesh and is not of God. And this is that spirit of the Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come, and even now already is in the world. You get it? A lot of times we think Antichrist is a person. And he is and will be. For everything God has, Satan has a counterfeit. God gave His Son, Jesus Christ. Satan's going to give his as Antichrist. But just as God has the Holy Spirit working in our lives and working in our world and in our system, so does Satan have Antichrist-type spirit working in the world. That troubleness that I have, and again, I'm not trying to be super spiritual because I ain't. That's the troubleness is trying to get me to shut up about what I'm sharing with you today. How many of you ever been in a situation as a Christian and you got them goosebumps on you that wasn't the good ones? I mean, you can be around somebody and they just, something ain't right about this deal. That's that spirit of Antichrist. Then, lastly, D, the system. And this is going to bring it all to a head. The world is described as a system. It's an evil, rebellious, anti-God, anti-Christ system that is influencing and controlling humanity. Get this. You would think, people often think this, Satan is that little red-looking devil with horns and a pointed pitchfork and a cape, and he looks like the devil. The reality is, when Lucifer was an angel in heaven, he was one of the most beautiful angels in heaven. And he doesn't come to us in that pitchfork way. Notice how he works. Through our education, Hamilton County, through entertainment. Hollywood is as ungodly as they come, and all the way across the country, anywhere Hollywood and that type of things taking place. Through our entertainment and media, promoting lifestyles promoting immodest fashion, ideas, and mentality. The whole transgender agenda, abortion agenda, divorce, cohabitating, idolatrous use of sports. It's right in where we live. Back in my day, when I was young and in school, if my school system was going to take the Bible out of the library, there'd have been some upset parents. There probably would have been some school board members toted home a whooping. Literally. As a matter of fact, when I was in school, we still had prayer every morning and the Pledge of Allegiance. Where's that at today? Slowly but surely, the education system is dumbing down and trying to push God out of everything. the day they voted prayer out of school. And they voted it out before I was in school, but our school still stood up and did it anyway. But when they voted prayer out of the school, almost instantly the school shooting started. You see, it wasn't a bunch of bad people. It was Satan working through his system to destroy the lives of young people through our education system, through our entertainment. I told you I feel convicted too. What do you watch? What do you listen to? What do you promote? Somebody drop a pin right now, see if I can hear it. What do you watch? What do you listen to? Because I know in my own life what goes through these eyeballs, what goes through these ears will come out my mouth, my hands, and my feet. And if you watch that stuff, if you back that stuff, if you promote that stuff, it will affect your life and you'll be affected and conformed to the world. I don't like preaching this any more than you like hearing it, because I want everybody to like me. But more importantly, I have a mandate to share God's Word with you. I was troubled yesterday. I would scroll down through Facebook and I saw somebody that was a claim to be a Christian. And I believe they are. And I've seen other things in their life. I mean, if you're going to be a Christian and you promote stuff on your Facebook page, and then you tell me, don't judge me, I'm sorry. You're going to be dumb enough to put it on there, I could judge it, because I am called to judge fruit. And he was excited about going to a concert in Atlanta. I believe it was Def Leppard, and I don't remember who all the other ones were. And I guarantee you that rascal ain't in church today, because he stayed out too late last night being conformed to the world. What do you go and see? Where do you go? It makes a difference. What's your entertainment? What's your media source? Because it's promoting a lifestyle of immodest fashion. I'm sorry, ladies, but it's on you. I don't think there's a way possible for a man to dress provocative. We're ugly. Can I get a witness? I mean, if I unbutton my shirt, Lord help y'all. If I wear short shorts, good night. That'll scar all the kids in here. But ladies, as serious as I know how to be, cover yourself up. You say, well, it's covered. Yeah, but it's so tight if you had a quarter in your pocket, we could tell what the date was. I hate to say this, but I am a red-blooded, my heart is pumping male. And ladies, we have problems with our eyes. I'm being honest with you. I've told my daughters and I've told my daughter's friends, she could testify, boys are pigs. That's exactly the way I said it. And I'm being serious. I'm not trying to be joking. And it's their responsibility to cover up. I had a saying when I was youth pastor, if it ain't for sale, don't advertise. I'm going to have to go out the back door. I can done tell this morning. Kevin, Brother Troy, I need protection, okay? Cover up. Look like a Christian young lady. Look like a Christian woman. And I've been told is, but I'll be made fun of at school. Whoop-dee-doo. I was made fun of a lot in school. And as my daddy said, I'd have to take a half a baby aspirin worried about it. I didn't give a rip. Still don't. You got to get over what the world thinks. What does God think about your life? It's important. Here's the thing. Satan wants to destroy every young person in the building. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he's going to attack in your life. Mamas and daddies, he wants to destroy your marriage. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he is going to attack. Single person, he wants to destroy your testimony. It's not a matter of when, not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he will attack. The Bible tells us in 1 John 2:15, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. The lust of the flesh includes sins such as sexual immorality and other indulgence. Any type of sexual immorality. And you just about have to go through life instead of a face mask on, blinders on. Do you realize that they use sex to sell Peak antifreeze? Hardee's used to use women in bikinis washing a car to sell a hamburger. Copenhagen has half-naked women on their little posters selling Copenhagen Skoal. Thinking if you put that junk in your mouth, you'll get a girl that looks like that. If I was a girl, I wouldn't go within 1,000,000 miles of somebody with worm dirt in their mouth. Can I get a witness? Girls, would y'all really want to kiss a dude with that stuff? No. But they know that it sells. Now we could sit here and say, woohoo, amen, preacher. Preach about that sexual immorality. What about other indulgence? I need to go to the altar on this one. Indulgence is anything you're addicted to. I make no bones about it. You can tell by looking at me, I'm addicted to sugar. And it's been a lifelong battle. I need to fight that. What's in your life that you indulge in? The lust of the eyes, the root of covetousness. It is a deeply desire for material riches and possessions of this world. If you think more about getting something than you do being something for the Lord, you got a problem with that particular thing. The pride of life is boasting of ambition and achievement, a thirst for the honor bestowed by and the applause received from the world. The pride of life leads to boasting about what we have or what we do. That goes back to trying to please the world. You don't have to. Matter of fact, it's better if you don't. If the world don't like you, that's a good sign you're doing what's right. Let me ask you a question this morning. Do you understand that the world is wicked? Do you understand who we're fighting today? I heard one old preacher say it this way: many people think that the old ship of Zion is the love boat, when in fact it's a battleship. The old ship of Zion is not the love boat. It's not partying happy all the time. It's a battleship, and we're called to man the stations because we are in the battle for very existence of our lives. Because the world would love to destroy every person in the building. It's up to you and I to stand against it. Secondly, we may not get done with all of them. I told Miss Mickey we would, but I told one person my messages are like bologna. It don't matter where you slice it off at, it's still good, okay? So we may slice it off after 2. The world and how it is directed. How it is directed, John 14:30. Hereafter I will not talk much with you, for the prince of this world cometh, and hath nothing in me. Luke 4, verse 5 through 8. And the devil, taking him up to a high mountain, showed unto him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said unto him," this is talking about Jesus when he took him up to be tempted, and this is Satan talking to Jesus, "All this power I will give thee, and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me, and whomever I will I give it." Did you hear that? Satan talking to Jesus. This world's directed by him. "If thou therefore will worship me, and all shall be thine." And Jesus answered said unto him, "Get thee behind me, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve." 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 3. "But if our gospel be hid, is it hidden to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious of gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine in them." Ephesians 2:2. "Wherein in times past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience." Here's what you need to understand today. The world is run by him. Satan is the second most powerful being in the universe. And in the world, when it comes to non-Christian, he is king. He is ruler. He is the instigator. He is the director. He is the motivator. And even though the lost and dying world are his people, he doesn't love them any more than he loves you. And his goal is to destroy them. But if he could take you along with him, he surely will. And oftentimes he will use them to discourage you. See, Satan cannot possess you, but he can come against you. He cannot come into your life, but he can be on the outside pushing and pulling to conform you to his system. And understand, he doesn't fight fair. When you feel the urge to follow after those desires, those immodest dressing, the immodest entertainment, whatever it may be, understand and know you are allowing him to control in your life. That's him trying to conform you. You got to know who you're up against. You got to know what the playbook is. You got to know how he acts. Let me move on. I want to really get to the last one because it's good. All right? I'll try to do this one fast. The world is despises. The world is despised. Don't love the world. 1 John 2. There's a lot of verses. I hope you're writing them down. It should be in your bulletin. Go back and read these. I know they're on the screen. Don't let this be the last time this week you see them. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is so of the world. You get that? How many ever heard of you can't straddle a fence? Don't tell me you're a Christian, but you follow after all the nonsense. Don't do it. B, don't befriend the world. James 4:4, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whatsoever thereof will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. The Bible tells us that you are either hot or cold. There's no lukewarm. What does the Bible say about lukewarm? Good old country word, puke. He said, I will throw you up. It's what God thinks about a lukewarm Christian. Somebody says, I am a Christian, but boy, I like this kind of music. I am a Christian, and I'll have a beer every now and again. I am a Christian, and I'll dress ever how I want to dress. It's my body. No, it's not. It's been bought with a price. And if you're saved today, you belong to Him. You cannot straddle the fence. It doesn't work. C, do not conform to the world. Our text verse, be not conformed, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable, perfect will of God. We've already told you, conforming means to be the outside pressure. What does transforming mean? It's an inside pressure. Be ye transformed. How? By the renewing of your mind. How do you renew your mind? God's Word. I don't understand it, preacher. We have Bible studies. I am willing any day of the week to disciple you, but I cannot force feed you. If you only show up on an occasion to church and that's all you get, you're going to be anemic. You're not going to be transformed. And even if you come every Sunday morning and you sit in here every Sunday morning, but that's all you hear, you will not be transformed. If you come on Sunday morning and you come on Wednesday night to our Bible study, you will be better, but I still don't believe you are completely transformed. I believe it has to be a daily thing with you and God. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. What does renewing mean? Over and over and over. I come to the realization, and it had not hit me until this morning, actually. What is this year? What's the year? 2024. In March of 1994. Sounds weird saying 1900 something, don't it? Well, that's way back yonder. 1994, I surrendered to the ministry. 30 years, y'all. That's hard to believe. It seems like yesterday. I'm 50. I'll be 55 here in just a few days. Don't look a day over 60, do I? I taught my first Sunday school lesson when I was 18. It took 5 minutes, and I repeated myself about 4 times. That's all I knew. It was terrible, y'all. Over that 30-plus years, I've learned a lot. And every day that I learn and I study, I realize how much more I need to learn. You see, I'm having to constantly renew my mind and learn and learn and learn. You never get done learning. That's why you have to continue to do it. Let me ask you a question. Do you despise the world? As a Christian, you ought to. It ought to make you mad when you see the stuff that you see. It ought to make you mad. I used to like watching on HGTV home improvement type shows. And let me preface what I'm about to tell you. I do not hate homosexuals. Do not hate them. I have family members living that lifestyle. But I do hate the lifestyle, and I really dislike having it shoved down my throat. I used to watch HGTV because I liked home improvement. That's the field I was in for so long. And it got to where it was taking over. Every show, it was about homosexuals getting their houses redone. You know, do straight people not have their houses redone? I don't know. If there was a contest, at least one of the contestants was living that lifestyle. The sitcoms, they used to make fun of it. Now it's the lead roles. Campbell's Soup has a commercial with a homosexual family in it. It's everywhere. I get tired of it. How do you feel? Do you despise what happens in our world? I like watching football. I love watching football. But you can't hardly watch it for the half-naked women on the commercials. That affects me. I'm sorry. You can't hardly scroll through Facebook without it. How do you feel? The reason I'm asking that is that's a barometer of where you're at today. If it doesn't affect you, we need to have a checkup. Then lastly, the world defeated. I always end on a positive note. The world defeated. 1 John 5, verse 4. And whatsoever is born of God overcometh the world. And this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. Who is he that overcometh the world, but he that believeth that Jesus is the Son of God? I've asked this no telling how many times. How many of you like to win? Put your life in His hands and you're on the winning side. Put your life and trust in Him and you're on the winning side. Do you know why Satan fights so hard? Because he knows he's a... Say that like you mean it. He knows he is a... Thank you. The world is defeated. 1 John 4:4. Ye are of God, little children, and have overcome them. Because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. During the middle part of this message today, you may have been sitting there thinking, but, oh, Pastor, my whole wardrobe is that. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can overcome this in my life. I don't know if I can do this or do that. Focus on Him and renew your mind. Get in the book. Find the verses that help you with that, whatever it is in your life. If it's immodest dressing, find the verses that deal with that. And know that Him working in you is way better than you trying to do it on your own. I'm the world's worst at trying to do it on my own. And I have found out when I put Him in control and allow Him to work through me, it's almost easy. Why? Because you got all power working in your corner. It's discouraging today as a Christian to seemingly think the world's winning. That agenda is winning. You can't watch TV without it winning. It's everywhere. But do you realize today that's as good as it's going to get for them? We're victors. We just got to start acting like it. We're victorious. We just got to start living like it. We're winners. We got to start telling everybody else about it. People's got money, they're still looking for drugs. People got money, they're still looking for illicit sex. They've got everything the world can offer, they're still miserable until they get Jesus in their life. I would encourage you, you can like Deion Sanders or dislike him. I don't care. There's things about him I don't like. There's a lot of things about him I do like. But you read his testimony or watch it somewhere on YouTube or whatever. His testimony is, I made millions of dollars in the NFL. I made millions of dollars in promotions. And he said, I would sit at the house miserable. He said, I've had more women than you could think of. I've had the jewels. I've had the cars. I've had the homes. He said, my life was completely empty until the day Jesus came into my life. He may not do everything right, and none of us do. But you won't talk to him long till you'll know he believes in Jesus and has accepted him into his life. He said, I have peace today. No matter who talks about me, no matter what happens, I'm his. Look, dear Christian, today, go out here a winner today. Know in whom you have believed. And whatever issues you got in your life that you're allowing Satan to influence, stand up. Be a winner and push back on it. Be transformed in your life, not conformed in your life. Every head bowed, every eye closed. I want to ask a question, and this is very serious. I want every head bowed, every eye closed. The question is this: can you, as a person here today, take me back to a time and a place in your life where you, either verbally or non-verbally in your heart, said, Lord, I know I'm a sinner. And Lord, I know that I stand in need of forgiveness. And Lord, as best I know how, I'm asking you to forgive me of my sins. And Lord, as best I know how, I'm asking you to come in and be Lord of my life. The question is that, do you remember that day and that time? If you can remember that day, you can remember that time, I want you to simply slip your hand up this morning. All over the building. All right? You put your hands down. Now, the other question is this, and I could not tell for sure, and I want to ask you, if you cannot take me back to a place and time, I want you to raise your hand, but I want you to understand I'm not going to point you out. I will not come to you. I would not want to embarrass you for anything, but I would love to pray for you. Anybody in the building, just slip your hand and say, Brother Chris, I'm not sure. I see that hand. Anybody else? Say, I'm not 100% sure today that if I were to die, I'd go to heaven. I have doubt. We have one. Is there another? Here in a moment, I'm going to pray. And I'm going to pray for that one, but I also feel like we need to pray for everybody. How many of you would be like your pastor today and say, Brother Chris, I am often catch myself being conformed to the world instead of being transformed? How many would raise your hand today and say, Brother Pastor, please pray for me? Hands all over the building. You see, I was worried today I would offend you, but I'm glad that you've got an open heart. You're willing to accept it. Because we're all in this together. I do not stand up before you high and mighty. Let's pray for each other, and especially for the one today that raised her hand. Lord, we thank you today for your goodness to us, for your mercies on us. Lord, I thank you for